I never believed in fate until that Saturday morning in May, when the universe decided to rearrange my entire world with nothing more than a shovel and some Texas soil. The Earth Day volunteer site buzzed with weekend do-gooders, all of us pretending we could save the planet one sapling at a time. After 3 months of drowning in my own pity since Derek walked out, I figured planting something might help me grow beyond the mess he left behind. The coordination table assigned me Plot 47, and I trudged through the crowd carrying my tools like weapons against my own loneliness. "Damn organizers," muttered a voice behind me. I turned to see her struggling with an oversized bag of mulch, her brunette hair escaping from a messy ponytail. "Plot 47? She nodded, those green eyes catching the morning light. "Lillian Reed. And you're either my partner or about to steal my trees." "Haley Garcia. Museum curator by day, amateur environmentalist by weekend." Her laugh came easy, genuine, not like Derek's forced chuckles when I talked about my work. Sound designer by trade. I make noise for a living. We worked the first hour in comfortable silence, our shovels finding rhythm together. The spring heat made quick work of our resolve to stay clean. Dirt streaked her cheek when she wiped away sweat, and something stirred in my chest that had nothing to do with physical exertion. "Museums must be quiet," she said, tamping soil around a young oak. "Deadly quiet. Sometimes I play nature sounds in my office just to feel alive." "What kind of nature sounds?" "Rain on leaves, ocean waves, nothing too exotic." She paused her digging. "You know rain on leaves isn't just rain on leaves, right? Each species creates different tones. Oak leaves sound like whispered secrets." The way she described sound made me want to listen to everything differently, made me want to hear whatever secrets she was whispering. Our third sapling went in crooked. We both reached to straighten it, our hands colliding on the thin trunk. The contact lasted maybe 3 seconds, but my pulse decided to run a marathon. "Careful," she said, not pulling away immediately. "Always am." "I doubt that." By noon, we'd planted 6 trees, and discovered we both owned the same obscure documentary about abandoned places. She mentioned a Korean film I'd been dying to see but had no one to watch it with. "These trees will outlive us both," Lillian said, surveying our work. Depressing thought. Or hopeful. We just created something permanent. Standing there beside her, dirt under my nails and sweat cooling on my skin, permanent felt like exactly what I'd been searching for without knowing it. The volunteer coordinator called everyone for the group photo, but I couldn't take my eyes off the woman who'd just spent 4 hours making me forget Derek ever existed. "Coffee sometime?" The words escaped before I could stop them. I'd like that. Simple as planting trees, apparently. 3 days after the tree planting, I found myself standing outside Lillian's studio with a proposal that sounded more like a pickup line than professional business. The contemporary art exhibit needed an audio component, and suddenly she was the only sound designer in all of Texas. Her studio occupied the basement level of an old brick warehouse downtown. The space felt like stepping inside someone's dreams, walls lined with equipment I couldn't name and speakers positioned like sentries around the room. "Museum work, huh?" She gestured toward a worn leather chair. "What kind of sounds make people want to stare at paintings longer?" "Something subtle, immersive without being obvious." Lillian moved between mixing boards and computers with the fluid confidence of a surgeon. Her fingers danced across sliders and knobs, conjuring whispers from machines I'd never seen before. "Close your eyes," she said. The first sound emerged like morning fog, soft, indefinable. It seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere, then layers built underneath. Footsteps on marble, distant conversations, the subtle creak of old buildings settling into themselves. "This is what museums sound like when no one's listening," she explained. My chest tightened with something between recognition and longing. She'd captured the essence of my workplace better than I could have described it myself. "How do you do that? Make sounds feel like memories?" "Everything has its own frequency. Museums, people, feelings. I just find ways to blend them." The demonstration continued for an hour. She played me compositions that sounded like rainstorms on windows, like conversations in languages I almost understood, like loneliness transformed into something beautiful. "Coffee break?" I suggested when my brain reached saturation. The cafe next door specialized in the kind of artisanal everything that made Derek roll his eyes. Lillian ordered something with 5 syllables while I stuck to plain black. "Tell me about the worst museum visit of your life," she said, settling into the corner booth. "Easy. 3rd grade field trip. Kid threw up on a Monet reproduction. That's not worst, that's memorable. Kids bringing life to sterile spaces." Her perspective flipped everything upside down. We talked about art, about the documentaries we both loved, about growing up in small Texas towns, where being different meant being invisible. "I collect vintage records," she admitted. "Spent my college beer money on Blue Note jazz albums. I watch David Attenborough documentaries when I can't sleep. Planet Earth, or the earlier stuff? All of it." His voice makes everything seem possible. The conversation flowed like we'd known each other for years instead of days. No awkward pauses, no fishing for topics. When she laughed at my story about catching teenagers making out behind the medieval armor display, the sound made my stomach flutter in ways I tried to ignore. "I should get back," I said, though leaving felt like the last thing I wanted to do. "Right. Professional meeting and all." We stood simultaneously, that moment when casual acquaintances decide how to say goodbye. A handshake seemed too formal, a hug too presumptuous. Lillian solved the dilemma by stepping closer, her hand touching my elbow gently. "Thanks for thinking of me for this project. Thanks for making it sound better than I imagined." Her fingers lingered on my arm for 3 heartbeats longer than necessary. When she leaned in, I thought she might hug me. Instead, her lips brushed my cheek in a kiss so soft I wondered if I'd imagined it. "See you soon, Haley." Walking back to my car, I touched the spot where her lips had been. Professional meeting, my ass. Whatever was happening between us had nothing to do with museum exhibits and everything to do with the way she said my name like it meant something important. The exhibit installation consumed the next 2 weeks of my life, but having Lillian there made every late evening feel like stolen time rather than overtime. We'd established a routine by Thursday. She'd arrive at 6 with takeout from whatever ethnic place caught her fancy. I'd clear space among the art pieces, and we'd work until the security guards started their rounds. "Hand me that cable," she said, crouched behind a sculpture that looked like twisted metal but cost more than my car. I passed her the thick black cord, our fingers brushing in the exchange. These moments kept happening. Small contacts that lasted just long enough to send electricity up my spine. Testing audio in Gallery 3, her voice echoed through the museum's PA system. The soundscape she'd created transformed the sterile white walls into something alive. Visitors would walk through layers of ambient noise that shifted based on which pieces they approached. Classical strings near the Renaissance section, industrial rhythms by the modern installations. "It's perfect," I told her, meaning more than just the audio. "Not quite. The transition between galleries needs smoothing." She tweaked settings on her laptop while I watched her work. The concentration on her face, the way she bit her lower lip when solving problems, the casual elegance of her movements around equipment that looked like mission control. Everything about her fascinated me in ways that should have terrified me. "Dinner break?" I suggested when her stomach growled audibly. "Thai place on University? Their pad CEW is legendary." We'd claimed a table in the back, away from the dinner crowd. The conversation had evolved beyond professional small talk into something more dangerous, more personal. "Ever been married?" she asked between bites. "Engaged once." Derek couldn't understand why I cared more about dead artists than living bank accounts. "Sounds like his loss. What about you?" "Couple of serious relationships, nothing that stuck." She paused, studying my face. "What are we doing here, Haley?" The question hung between us like a challenge. I could deflect, make a joke, pretend this was still about museum exhibits. Instead, I told the truth. "I don't know. But I don't want to stop." Her smile started slow, then bloomed into something that made my chest tight. "Good, because I've been thinking about you since that first day planting trees." Back at the museum, the atmosphere between us had shifted from professional to electric. Every shared glance carried weight. Every accidental touch lingered longer than necessary. Final test, she announced, adjusting the master volume. I walked through the galleries while she monitored from the control room. The audio was flawless, creating an immersive experience that would make visitors feel like they were stepping inside each artwork. How's it sound from your end? Her voice crackled through my earpiece. Like magic. Meet me in the medieval hall. I want to show you something. The medieval section sat in the museum's oldest wing, where original stone walls created natural acoustics that couldn't be replicated. Lillian stood among the armor displays, her equipment glowing in the dim security lighting. Listen, she whispered. She played a composition I hadn't heard before. Strings and woodwinds layered with something that sounded like distant voices, like prayers echoing in cathedral spaces. The music seemed to emerge from the stone itself. What is that? Something I've been working on. For you. The admission hit me harder than any declaration of love could have. She'd created beauty specifically for me, crafted sound that captured feelings I couldn't name myself. Lillian. She moved closer, close enough that I could smell her perfume mixed with the faint ozone scent of electronic equipment. I know this is complicated. Very complicated. Worth it though? Instead of answering with words, I closed the distance between us. Our first real kiss happened, surrounded by suits of armor and medieval weapons, her music still playing softly through hidden speakers. Her lips were warm and soft, and tasted faintly of the Thai food we'd shared. When we broke apart, she rested her forehead against mine. So that's a yes? Definitely a yes. The security guard's flashlight swept past the doorway, reminding us where we were. We separated reluctantly, but something fundamental had changed. The professional pretense was over. The kiss in the medieval hall changed everything and nothing. We finished the exhibit setup like professionals, but the air between us hummed with unspoken promises. I spent the weekend replaying that moment, trying to reconcile this new version of myself with the woman who'd dated Derek for 3 years, without ever feeling her pulse race at a simple touch. Monday morning brought Lillian to my office with coffee and a shy smile. She'd braided her hair differently, softer somehow, and I found myself staring longer than appropriate for a workplace visit. Regrets? She asked, settling into the chair across from my desk. None. You? Only that we waited so long. The honesty in her voice made my chest tighten. This wasn't some experiment or desperate rebound from Derek. Whatever was happening between us felt too significant for simple labels. I started, then stopped. How do you explain 29 years of assuming you know yourself completely? Never what? Been with a woman, never thought about it, never questioned. Lillian leaned forward, her expression gentle. There's no timeline for figuring yourself out, Haley. I spent college dating guys who bored me senseless before I finally admitted what I already knew. How did you know? Same way you're knowing now. It just feels right. Her words settled something anxious in my stomach. This wasn't about changing who I was. This was about finally becoming who I was supposed to be. Come to my place tonight, she said. I'll cook something that won't give us food poisoning. Lillian's apartment reflected her perfectly. Vintage audio equipment mixed with modern furniture. Walls covered in concert posters and artwork from local artists. The space felt lived in and creative. Nothing like Derek's sterile condo. Wine? She offered, already pouring 2 glasses of red. We ended up on her couch, legs tangled together, talking about everything except what we both wanted to happen. She told me stories about touring with indie bands in college. I described the strangest artifacts the museum had acquired. Normal conversation made surreal by the electric tension building between us. I'm nervous, I admitted when the talking finally stopped. Good nervous or terrified nervous? Both. She set down her wine glass and moved closer, her hand finding my cheek. We don't have to do anything you're not ready for. But I was ready, maybe more ready than I'd ever been for anything. When she kissed me this time, it was deeper, hungrier than our tentative moment in the museum. Her hands tangled in my hair, and I pulled her closer, amazed by how perfectly she fit against me. Bedroom? She whispered against my lips. The words sent heat shooting through my entire body. Yes. What happened next felt like discovering a new language I'd always known how to speak. Lillian moved with patient confidence, reading my reactions, guiding me through territory that should have felt foreign but instead felt like coming home. Her touch was reverent and demanding by turns, teaching me things about my own body I'd never imagined. In the afterwards, lying tangled in her sheets with moonlight painting patterns on her skin, I understood why nothing with Derek had ever felt complete. This was what I'd been searching for without realizing it. This connection that went beyond physical, beyond convenient compatibility. "What are you thinking?" Lillian asked, tracing lazy circles on my shoulder. "That I've been living half a life. And now? Now I feel fully awake for the first time." She kissed my forehead, then my lips, soft and sweet. "Stay the night? I'd like that." Sleep came easily in her arms, dreamless and peaceful. I woke before her alarm, watching morning light gradually illuminate her face. The panic I'd expected never came. No regret, no confusion about what this meant, just certainty that everything had changed, and I was exactly where I belonged. My phone buzzed with a text from my assistant about the exhibit's final walkthrough. Reality intruding on our perfect bubble. "Work calls?" Lillian mumbled, eyes still closed. "Soon, but not yet." I kissed her awake properly, savoring these stolen moments before we had to return to the outside world. The first letter arrived on a Tuesday morning, slipped under my office door like a paper snake waiting to strike. Plain white envelope, my name typed in block letters across the front. No return address, nothing suspicious enough to warrant caution. Inside, a single photograph. Lillian and me leaving her studio 3 nights earlier, her hand on my lower back as I leaned into her car. The image was grainy, taken from across the street, but clear enough to make my blood freeze. "Unnatural" was scrawled across the bottom in red ink. My hands shook as I shoved the photo back into the envelope. The museum's morning bustle continued around my office, tourists and staff going about their normal routines, while my world tilted sideways. I called Lillian immediately. "Can you come to the museum? Now?" "What's wrong?" "Just come, please." She arrived within 20 minutes, her face tight with concern. I handed her the envelope without explanation, watching her expression shift from confusion to horror as she processed what she was seeing. "Shit," she whispered. "Who would do this?" "I don't know, but they've been watching us." We stared at the photograph like it might reveal its secrets if we looked hard enough. The angle suggested someone had been stationed across from her studio for hours, waiting for the perfect shot. Should we call the police? And tell them what? Someone took a picture of us in public? Lillian sank into the chair across from my desk. "This feels like a threat." "It is a threat." The rest of the day passed in a haze of paranoia. Every museum visitor who lingered too long near my office became a potential suspect. Every phone call made me jump. By closing time, exhaustion weighed on my shoulders like a lead blanket. "Stay at my place tonight," Lillian said, as we walked to the parking garage together. "We can't keep hiding." "We're not hiding. We're being smart." But even at her apartment, safety felt temporary. We checked the locks twice, closed all the curtains, moved through her space like fugitives in our own lives. The second letter appeared at Lillian's studio the next morning. This one contained no photograph, just a typed message that made my stomach turn to ice. "Unnatural relationships have consequences. Stop now or face judgment." "Judgment from who?" Lillian asked, her voice hollow. "Someone who thinks they have the right to police our lives." We spent the afternoon analyzing every detail, searching for clues that might identify our tormentor. The typing appeared to come from an older machine, possibly a typewriter. The paper was standard office stock, available anywhere. No fingerprints except ours. "Maybe it's someone from work," I suggested. "Someone who saw us together. Or a neighbor. Or just some random psycho who spotted us and decided we offended their sensibilities." The possibilities felt endless and equally terrifying. We were being stalked by a ghost who could be anyone, anywhere, watching our every move. That evening, paranoia transformed our routines into military operations. Lillian checked her car for tracking devices while I scrutinized every shadow between the museum and the parking garage. We took different routes to her apartment, doubled back twice to ensure no one was following. "This is insane," she said as we finally locked ourselves inside. "We shouldn't have to live like this. But we do. Until we figure out who's doing this." Sleep came fitfully, interrupted by every creak and whisper the old building made settling into the night. I found myself studying Lillian's face in the darkness, memorizing details in case this happiness was about to be torn away from us. The third message arrived Friday afternoon, sealed in the same anonymous envelope but containing something that made us both go silent with fear. A key. Just a brass key on a plain ring, with a typed note that read, "I can get closer than you think." "Change the locks," I said immediately. "That's not my apartment key." We stared at the key like it was a live weapon. If it wasn't to her place, where did it lead? My office? The museum? Some location we hadn't even considered? "We need help," Lillian said finally. "Professional help." The weight of our new reality settled over us like a shroud. Someone out there was escalating their campaign against us, moving from observation to direct threat. Our perfect bubble of newfound love had been punctured by hatred we couldn't name or fight. "I won't let them win," I said, taking her hand. "What if they get violent? Then we deal with that too, together." But courage felt fragile in the face of anonymous malice. Someone wanted to destroy what we'd built, and they were getting bolder. The brass key haunted my dreams, but morning brought something more tangible than nightmares. I arrived at the museum early, determined to review security footage that might reveal our stalker's identity. The IT department grudgingly gave me access to the camera system, though they insisted on hovering like nervous parents. "There," I pointed at the screen. "Tuesday morning, around 7:30. The grainy footage showed the museum's side entrance, where staff usually arrived before public hours. At 7:26, a figure in maintenance coveralls approached my office wing. Average height, baseball cap pulled low, moving with purpose but not panic. "Can you enhance this?" I asked the tech. "Not enough to see facial features." "But watch this." The figure produced something from their pocket. A key. My key, apparently, because they accessed the corridor leading to administrative offices without any struggle or searching. "Someone has master access," the tech observed. "Or they made copies." The footage revealed our stalkers' boldness. They weren't sneaking around like common criminals. They moved through the museum like they belonged there, like they knew exactly where cameras were positioned and how to avoid clear identification. I called Lillian immediately. "Meet me at the police station. I found something." Detective Sarah Chen looked like she'd stepped out of a crime procedural. Sharp suit, sharper eyes, and the kind of no-nonsense attitude that made me instantly trust her judgment. She reviewed our collection of threatening letters with professional detachment. "Have you noticed anyone following you? Strange phone calls? Unusual activity around your homes or workplaces?" "Just the letters," Lillian said. "But we've been different, more careful." "Good. This person is escalating, which means they might make mistakes. Tell me about your daily routines." We spent an hour cataloging our movements, identifying patterns that our stalker might be exploiting. The museum's public nature made surveillance easy. Lillian's studio sat in a mixed-use building with multiple access points. "I'll assign extra patrol units to both locations," Detective Chen promised. "But you need to document everything. Every strange phone call, every person who seems to be watching you, even paranoid observations could be valuable." The afternoon brought unexpected discoveries. Lillian had been experimenting with her audio equipment, analyzing ambient recordings from recent studio sessions. Modern gear captured more than intentional sounds, picking up background noise that human ears typically filtered out. "Listen to this," she said, adjusting playback settings on her computer. The recording was from 2 nights earlier, when we'd worked late on exhibition prep. Beneath the expected sounds of our conversation and equipment, something else emerged. Footsteps in the hallway outside her studio. Slow, deliberate movement that started and stopped in rhythm with our activities. "Someone was listening," I said. "For almost 2 hours." The realization sent ice through my veins. While we'd been creating art together, sharing intimate moments we thought were private, someone had been outside documenting our every word and movement. Lillian pulled up more recordings, searching for patterns. The footsteps appeared on multiple files dating back 10 days, always during evening hours. Always lasting exactly as long as our sessions together. They're not random, she observed. They know our schedules. Which means they know us, personally. The investigation narrowed our suspect pool significantly. Random strangers don't develop detailed knowledge of two people's routines without dedicated surveillance. This was someone with access to our lives, someone who could observe us regularly without raising suspicion. Museum staff, I said finally. Has to be. Or my building's maintenance crew. Or neighbors. Or clients who've been to the studio. But the museum felt most likely. I'd worked there 4 years, built relationships with dozens of colleagues and volunteers. Someone in that trusted circle had turned toxic, transforming professional familiarity into personal harassment. Detective Chen met us at the museum after hours, reviewing security protocols and staff access procedures. The master key system allowed maintenance personnel to reach every corner of the building. Night security guards carried similar access. I'll need employee records, she told museum administration. Anyone with building access in the past month. The list was longer than expected. Full-time staff, part-time custodians, volunteer docents, contracted maintenance crews. 43 names total, any of whom could have developed an unhealthy interest in my personal life. Cross-reference this with people who work evening hours, Detective Chen suggested. Your stalker operates during specific time windows. That narrowed the field to 12 possibilities. 12 people who had legitimate reasons to be in the museum when normal business hours ended, who wouldn't raise suspicion moving through corridors near my office. As we walked through the empty galleries reviewing sightlines and camera coverage, Lillian stayed close beside me. The space that had once felt like sanctuary now seemed full of hiding places and blind spots. We'll catch them, Detective Chen assured us. People like this get overconfident. They make mistakes. But, walking to our cars in the darkened parking garage, surrounded by shadows that could conceal watching eyes, confidence felt like a luxury we couldn't afford. Someone was out there, planning their next move while we tried to guess their identity from a list of familiar names. Marcus Torres had worked night security at the museum for 6 months, long enough to learn every corridor and corner but not long enough for anyone to really know him. When Detective Chen pulled his file, the pieces started falling into place with sickening clarity. The overnight shift gave him perfect access to my office wing. His security clearance opened every door in the building, and according to his supervisor, Marcus had shown unusual interest in the contemporary art exhibit, asking detailed questions about my work schedule and project timeline. He requested extra shifts during your installation weeks, Detective Chen explained over coffee at the station. Claimed he wanted overtime pay, but that put him in the building every night you and Lillian were there. The knowledge felt like swallowing broken glass. While Lillian and I had been falling in love among artworks and audio equipment, Marcus had been watching, recording, building his case against what he perceived as our unnatural relationship. Why target us specifically? According to colleagues, he'd been asking personal questions about you for weeks. Whether you were single, if you dated anyone from work, classic signs of romantic fixation. The harassment escalated that very night. Lillian called me at 2 a.m, her voice shaking with barely controlled panic. Someone broke into the studio. They destroyed everything. I arrived to find organized chaos. Her computer monitors lay shattered on the floor. Audio cables had been sliced into useless segments. Mixing boards were smashed beyond repair. Thousands of dollars in equipment reduced to expensive trash. The recordings are gone, she said, standing amid the wreckage. Every backup drive, every project file, years of work. But the destruction wasn't random vandalism. Personal items remained untouched. Only professional equipment had been targeted, specifically the tools Lillian used to create art. Someone wanted to silence her voice, eliminate her ability to work. Among the debris, we found another typed message. Final warning. End the relationship or face worse consequences. Detective Chen arrived within minutes, her crime scene team photographing every detail of the break-in. But Marcus had been careful. No fingerprints except ours. No obvious evidence linking him to the destruction. He's escalating faster than expected, she observed grimly. This level of property destruction suggests he's losing patience with psychological warfare. The attack shattered something fundamental in our relationship dynamic. Fear crept into every interaction, poisoning moments that should have been pure joy. When Lillian kissed me that morning, I found myself checking shadows instead of focusing on her lips. "Maybe we should take a break," I suggested over breakfast, the words tasting like betrayal even as I spoke them. "From each other? Until this is over. Until Marcus is caught and prosecuted." Lillian set down her coffee cup with deliberate control. "You want to let him win? I want to keep you safe. By abandoning what we have? By proving his point that our relationship is something shameful that should be hidden?" Her anger cut deeper than Marcus's threats ever could. But seeing her life's work destroyed because of her association with me had awakened protective instincts I didn't know I possessed. This isn't about shame, it's about survival. Same thing, in the end. We spent the day in careful distance, orbiting each other like planets after a cosmic collision. The love remained, but fear had wrapped around it like barbed wire, making every touch potentially dangerous. That evening brought the worst escalation yet. Marcus abandoned subtlety entirely, appearing at Lillian's apartment building as she returned from purchasing replacement equipment. According to witnesses, he'd been waiting for hours. "You need to stop corrupting her," he told her, blocking the building entrance. "Haley was normal before you came along. Move aside, Marcus. She doesn't really want this life you're forcing on her. Deep down she knows it's wrong." Lillian tried to step around him, but Marcus grabbed her arm with enough force to leave bruises. "I'm trying to save both of you from damnation." A neighbor's intervention prevented physical violence, but the psychological damage was complete. Marcus had crossed from anonymous harassment into direct confrontation, shattering any remaining illusion of safety. "He thinks he's protecting me from you," I told Detective Chen when she called with updates on the incident report. "Classic stalker mentality. He's created a fantasy where you're the victim and he's the hero. What happens now?" "We arrest him. Tonight." The takedown occurred at the museum during Marcus's regular shift. He offered no resistance when Detective Chen and her team arrived, as if he'd been expecting them all along. In his locker, they found detailed surveillance notes documenting our movements for the past 3 weeks. "He kept a diary," Detective Chen informed us later. "Pages of observations about your relationship, plans for separating you two, religious justifications for his harassment campaign." The evidence was overwhelming. The typed letters matched his personal typewriter. Audio recordings from the studio break-in contained his voice making threats. Even the brass key had his fingerprints embedded in the metal. But triumph felt hollow standing in the ruins of Lillian's professional life. Marcus was caught, but the damage to our relationship might prove irreparable. Fear had teaching us to associate love with danger, connection with vulnerability. "We survived," I said as we watched Detective Chen's car disappear into the night. "Did we?" The question hung between us like a challenge neither was ready to answer. Marcus's arrest made the local news, though the reporters focused on the break-in rather than the underlying harassment. Museum security guard charged with vandalism, read the headlines, sanitizing the hate into simple property crime. The relief I'd expected never materialized. Instead, paranoia had rewired my nervous system, making me jump at shadows that turned out to be janitors and interpret concerned colleagues' questions as potential threats. Freedom felt fragile, temporary, like Marcus might appear around any corner despite being held on $50,000 bail. Lillian threw herself into rebuilding her studio with manic intensity. New equipment arrived daily, purchased with insurance money that couldn't restore the years of work he'd destroyed. I found her there most evenings, rewiring connections and testing sound levels with the obsessive focus of someone trying to outrun trauma. "You don't have to do this alone," I said, watching her struggle with a particularly complex mixing board. "I need to prove he didn't break me." To who? To myself. The space between us had grown measured in careful words and hesitant touches. We were both afraid, though of different things. She feared I'd leave to protect her from future danger. I feared staying would invite more violence into her life. Detective Chen called with updates on the case. Marcus had confessed to everything, claiming divine inspiration guided his harassment campaign. His lawyer was pushing for psychological evaluation, hoping to avoid serious jail time. "He's not going anywhere for a while," she assured me. But victims often struggle with the aftermath more than they expect. The observation proved prophetic. Sleep brought nightmares about anonymous letters and footsteps in dark hallways. Daylight hours were haunted by hypervigilance that exhausted me mentally and physically. Love had become associated with danger in ways that felt impossible to untangle. "We need to talk," Lillian said on a Thursday evening after finding me checking her apartment's locks for the third time in an hour. "About what?" "About whatever this is. This distance. This fear." We sat on opposite ends of her couch like strangers negotiating a treaty. The intimacy that had once felt natural now seemed complicated by everything Marcus had poisoned with his surveillance and hatred. "I keep wondering what would have happened if I'd never approached you for the exhibit," I admitted. "You'd still be half alive, and I'd still be alone. Marcus would have found some other reason to fixate on you. But you wouldn't have been hurt." "I was hurt because someone decided our love was wrong. That's not on you. That's on a world that teaches people like Marcus to hate what they don't understand." Her words carried conviction I wished I could share. Logic said she was right, but emotions don't respond to rational argument. Fear had wrapped itself around my heart like protective armor, and removing it felt impossibly risky. "What if we're not safe together?" I asked. "What if we're not complete apart?" The question cut through my defenses like a blade. 3 months ago, I'd been sleepwalking through life with Derek, convinced that comfortable was the same as happy. Now I knew the difference, and settling for less felt like choosing death over life. Lillian moved closer, her hand finding mine with the tentative touch of someone rebuilding trust from scratch. "I don't want to lose you to fear. I don't want to lose you to violence. Then let's choose love instead." The kiss that followed tasted like reclamation. Not the desperate hunger of new desire, but the deeper satisfaction of choosing each other despite circumstances that tried to tear us apart. Her hands tangled in my hair, and I pulled her closer, amazed by how right she still felt against me. "Bedroom?" she whispered, echoing our first night together. Yes. What happened next felt like healing made physical. We moved together with renewed tenderness, relearning each other's bodies as if Marcus's violation had reset everything back to the beginning. Every touch carried double meaning, pleasure and reclamation, desire and defiance. In the quiet afterwards, lying in her arms while moonlight painted familiar patterns on her skin, I understood that love wasn't something that could be destroyed by outside hatred. It could be tested, challenged, forced underground, but not eliminated. What we had was stronger than Marcus's delusions, more durable than his temporary power to frighten us. "No more running," I said against her shoulder. "No more hiding." What happens next? We live our lives, loudly, proudly, without permission from people who think they have the right to judge us. Her words felt like a promise and a challenge. The world hadn't become safer just because Marcus was behind bars. There would always be others who saw our happiness as a personal affront, who believed their hatred carried moral authority. But lying there in Lillian's arms, surrounded by the sound equipment she'd rebuilt from rubble, I realized that love was its own form of resistance. Every day we chose each other was a victory against forces that wanted us separated and ashamed. "I love you," I said, the words carrying more weight than they had before the nightmare began. "I love you too." Simple truth, complicated world, but worth fighting for. 6 months after Marcus's conviction, the Contemporary Soundscapes Gallery opened to unexpected fanfare. Local art critics called it revolutionary, while visitors lingered for hours in spaces where visual and auditory beauty merged into something transcendent. Lillian's rebuilt compositions had evolved beyond her original vision, incorporating layers of triumph and resilience that transformed simple museum visits into emotional journeys. Standing in the main gallery on opening night, watching couples and families move through the installation with wonder, I felt vindicated in ways that had nothing to do with professional success. Art was supposed to challenge comfort zones, expand understanding, create connections between strangers. Our collaboration had achieved all three. "Look at them," Lillian whispered, nodding toward an elderly couple holding hands while listening to her soundscape, designed for the Renaissance section. they're experiencing something they never knew they wanted. Same as us? Same as us. The gallery was packed with Lubbock's cultural elite, museum board members mixing with local artists and university professors who'd driven in from neighboring cities. Mayor Rodriguez had given a speech about the city's commitment to innovative arts programming. The regional newspaper's reviewer was taking extensive notes while photographing every installation. But the moment that mattered most came near closing time, when Detective Chen arrived in civilian clothes with a woman I didn't recognize. My wife Jennifer, she introduced. She's been dying to see what you two created after everything we went through together. Jennifer's appreciation was immediate and genuine. She moved through each section slowly, her conductor-trained ears catching subtleties that casual visitors missed. This is extraordinary. You've created dimensional sound. Thank you, Lillian said, her cheeks flushing with pride. For the art and the courage. Later, as the crowd thinned and cleanup began, Lillian and I found ourselves alone in the center gallery where that first kiss had happened months earlier. The space looked different now, transformed by permanent audio installations and lighting designed to complement her compositions. What are you thinking? She asked, watching me survey our combined achievement. That we built something beautiful from something terrible. Marcus? Fear, his hatred. The possibility that love wasn't worth the risk. She moved closer, her hand finding mine with the automatic ease of long practice. The hesitancy that had marked our reunion was gone, replaced by confidence earned through survival. Was it worth it? Every terrifying moment. The question I'd been carrying for weeks finally pushed itself past my lips. Move in with me. Your place is smaller than mine. Our place can be bigger than both. Her smile started slow, then bloomed into the radiant expression that had captivated me at that first tree-to-planting event. Are you proposing cohabitation or something more permanent? The distinction mattered more than I'd realized. Living together was practical. Marriage was declaration, public commitment to a future that couldn't be hidden or minimized by people who disapproved of our existence. Something more permanent. Instead of answering with words, Lillian pulled me closer and kissed me in the exact spot where our first tentative attraction had transformed into something undeniable. The kiss tasted like celebration and promise, like all the tomorrows we'd choose to face together. Is this your way of proposing? I asked when we separated. Actually, I had something more dramatic planned. She led me to the medieval hall where her original composition for me still played softly through hidden speakers. The same armor displays stood sentinel, but everything else had changed. Red roses formed a heart shape on the floor where we'd shared that first real kiss. How did you... Jennifer helped. Turns out Detective Chen's wife is a romantic. Lillian dropped to one knee beside the flower arrangement, producing a simple silver band from her jacket pocket. Haley Garcia, will you marry me and help me fill the rest of our lives with beautiful sound? The proposal was perfect. Not because of the roses or the romantic setting, but because it acknowledged everything we'd survived to reach this moment. Marcus's hatred hadn't destroyed us. Fear hadn't separated us. We'd chosen love over safety, authenticity over convenience, and discovered that happiness was worth every risk. Yes. She slipped the ring onto my finger with trembling hands, then stood to kiss me while our laughter echoed off medieval stone walls. Somewhere in the distance, her audio installation provided the perfect soundtrack to our beginning,